everyone. That's Titus, and I'm Thomas, and this is Everyone's Bad at Magic, where we untap, upkeep, and punt. And today we're joined by our homie Josh. Josh is a bit of a deck specialist, one could say. He is known, pretty well known for playing Tayam. One could say that he's yammed all over the meta. Uh, Josh, would you mind telling the people at home a little bit about yourself and why they should care about your opinions here?
Yeah, totally. Like you said, my name's Josh. Josh Zuckerman Erd on Top Deck. On the internet, I'm WelderZE. I am certainly a little bit of a Tayam specialist. It's been my tournament deck for about a year and a half now, as Austin from Critical EDH likes to call me. I'm the local Tayam terrorist. But yeah, I've been playing Tayam this season in the Invitational pretty prolifically, and currently I'm ranked about 120th in invitational standings. So I've been doing really well on Tayam this season, and my goal is to take it all the way to Indy.
That's awesome. Josh also made top four in our first in-person tournament that we threw a couple weeks ago, the stock up. So congratulations, Josh. That's quite an accomplishment.
Thank you
We,
very much.
we appreciate you coming in and hanging out for that as well.
Oh, the tournament was an absolute blast. It was so much fun. Thank you guys for hosting.
Oh, dude, thank you so much. If you need the best sleeves to protect your best decks, check out Sentry Sleeves using the link below. A pack of sleeves starts at only $10, and a portion of the proceeds goes to supporting local animal shelters. Use code EBAM5 to save 5% at checkout. Um, and we're just gonna jump straight into our Punter's Confessionals this week. Um, I haven't actually played any Magic this week, and it hurts my soul, so I don't have any punting stories. Josh, it sounds like you did come prepared with a story about how you've punted recently, though. Would you mind leading us off?
I sadly do have a punter's confessional. I've been playtesting my partner event deck. It's coming up this weekend for me. And so I've been playing my Tameshi Zerto list. It has been
Wait. Why are you doing that to yourself? That is,
I
that's,
I play Time as a main deck and bring it to large tournaments. I am a glutton for punishment.
oh, that sounds
Um,
like a nightmare to pilot.
oh yeah, I'm terrible at it. Uh, it is a deck where I'm pretty sure the deck is at least okay, and I'm just really bad. Um, so yesterday I was playing at our like Tuesday night locals, just casual fun. We get together for games and stuff at the local game store. I sit down and I'm playing with my wife across from me, Chris, one of our locals, and then Dalton. And we get into this crazy game, and I end up resolving an intuition. I put a breach in my yard. I put an LED in my yard. I'm feeling great. I have a force of will up, but Chris has a deafening silence out. Of course, the one time I'm not the stacks player at the table, and we end up bouncing the deafening silence on Chris's turn to try and stop some stuff he was doing, and it got a little crazy. And I make a deal with Dalton saying, "Hey, I at least want to get to my main. I want the first action of my main phase. You good with that? And I'll interact here, you'll interact here, and we'll all be good, and we'll not die to Chris right now." He was trying to Sam Cat combo us. Dalton agrees. We go to Dalton's turn. He intuitions himself. He now has Valley Flood Caller and Breach set up. And we go to my main phase. And I realize that I have another combo in hand. I have Zerda on board. So I go, all right, well, we'll see what he decides to do here. I cast my Basalt Monolith and realize that I don't have the extra blue card in hand for Force to try and stop Dalton. So my Basalt never resolved. Dalton totally breach comboed on top of me, and I was just like, oh, I guess that's enough of that. Sometimes you just don't have it.
Well, you don't play a lot of blue, so
Oh no, I am certainly known specifically for not playing blue. So it's definitely been a fun challenge learning how to pilot a deck with blue and red in it. It's not my normal.
oh, that's funny. Was the rule of law already off the battlefield at the beginning of
It
your turn?
it was. We we had answered it on Chris's turn so that we could hold up enough or cast enough interaction to stop Chris's Sam Cat combo.
Okay.
Um, I actually think I Dalton and I both fought over it on the way back down. Chris had a Veil of Summer, and I don't even know if I was supposed to. I had Otawara in hand, which is what I thought was my blue card. Um, but I think I was just supposed to not fight over it, let it resolve so that Dalton couldn't go as hard on his turn to try and then win on my main phase. I think I was just supposed to let it sit there, um, activate Tameshi, bring my own breach back into play without casting any spells, and then be able to resolve Otawara into and already have breach on board, be able to intuition and start my combo without casting any spells. I think would have been a better play, or just remember to have the blue card.
Fair enough. That's one that'll get you, but it's good to knock those cobwebs off before the tournament this coming weekend, or last weekend, depending on when this comes out. Um, this is unrelated to the punt, but now that you've mentioned it, and that got kind of my gears turning a little bit, is there a reason why Otawara and Beseju can't be ran in non-blue and non-green decks?
Um, Rulings wise, I don't believe they can because they produce a color of mana that your deck shouldn't be able to and have an activated ability to match. So
Fair
you
enough.
can't run it for that reason, I think.
Because I know you can
But
run like Yavimaya in
yes,
non-green decks.
but it doesn't actually itself produce
Produce
any
the blue
colored
mana.
mana
Okay.
until it is on board or have activated abilities that require that cost to be paid.
Fair enough. I appreciate that. Where's a judge when you need one?
I was about to say, have to call up Jay.
Titus, you got any punts that you want to talk about this week?
Not necessarily that I want to talk about it, but I do have punts. I'm gonna refrain from the worst one just because I don't want to relive that moment. But
Oh, well, now that you mention it, you kind of got to go down that pathway.
that would have been just remember when Josh said that there was a pitch card that they were missing? Well, I totally spaced on having the pitch card in my hand, so I'm not going to continue to elaborate. But moving
Very
past
fair.
that one, moving past that, it was a bad game, and like I was not in a good position. Um, moving past that one, I would say probably just because it happened in all my games. If you have a gut decision, go with it. That's one thing I'm gonna say. Don't let your opponent sway you. Sometimes you got to use your intuition, not the actual spell, but like your actual intuition. Outside of that, I think probably in my first game, I should have probably forced out interaction. I don't think I would have won, but I think I could have made a player go into a like our game go into a draw by attempting to maybe scare a player that was after me into doing something then and there. I don't know if it would have made things better or worse. It's hard to say. I feel like and this is probably the conversation in regards to Blue Farm, but when you have a lot of options or tools, you have so many decision paths, it could be hard to see what the clear route is, especially when nowadays your opponents can just win on top of you with all the instant speed effects.
Yeah.
So I think I think maybe just trying to make a push on my turn could have worked out, and I could have leveraged with another player to kind of like actually a couple other players to maybe like force the player in a most prominent position to waste resources to maybe leverage that game into a draw. I know that it's not clear with everything that was going on. There was a lot of stuff on the board, but yeah, use your intuition, pay attention to what's in your hand, and um, maybe just be proactive. There we go. Lessons to live by.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, one of the skills I'm trying to develop personally is I'm trying to get better at picking little fights here and there when it doesn't matter to me, but when I would be going to discard anyway, or when I have the worst round of priority, but I don't really have anything that I really need to be doing, but I could get rid of a couple cards and it doesn't really affect me. Um, just throwing the game a little bit of chaos just to see if it shakes up the status quo if I'm a little behind. Um, eh, just seeing if it works out. I see players who are a lot better than me doing it, and seems to work out pretty well for them.
Nothing ventured, nothing gained.
We also have a viewer submission. Shout out to our homie. Oh God, bud. Serotinus Sequoia. It's a cool name. It's just a mouthful. Hello, fellow punters. I too am bad at Magic. Today I punted by not fully reading the cards in my deck, and instead of mentally shortcutting what they do. It turns out that Quicksilver Elemental can copy anyone's activated abilities, not just your own. For example, my opponent had a Kenrith on board, while I had the ability to generate infinite mana. That could have won me a game. Instead, I sat through 2 turn rotations, top decking for another way to win, missing the one I already had on board. And while I've learned, this will unfortunately not be the last time I punt. Thank you. Dude, that's so real.
I've had players be able to win with my activated abilities in Tayam and not realize it with Quicksilver Elemental twice now.
I believe it. It's just, especially, I don't know if you guys do this to yourselves, but I play with a lot of foreign language cards in my decks. So if you don't know the Oracle text front and back, you are putting yourself at a huge disadvantage. And a big one for me that I always mess up is Copy Enchantment and Mirror Maid. And you kind of, I found that if you can find little like mental shortcuts to figure out which one's which, it helps a lot. So for me, 2 blue pips means you can copy anything. 1 blue pip, just enchantments. Uh, Something like that might be helpful for you.
I I've been known to call a judge to get Oracle text on my own cards, um, because of strange ruling interactions. Chains of Mephistopheles is a heck of a card, so that one often requires a judge call.
And a flowchart.
Yes, and a flowchart.
Well, thank you very much for that submission, Saratna Sequoia, and thank you very much, guys, for sharing those punts. Hopefully, we can take those and be better in future games from them. Um, Maybe not, but there's always hope. Anyway, our main topic today is Tayam, and we have our homie Josh to talk about it. Before we get too far into that deck, Josh, will you tell us a little bit about how you got into Magic and what started your journey?
Yeah, totally. I started playing Magic when I was a kid. I, 6, 7, 8. Played a little bit in elementary school, middle school. Stopped playing in high school. Completely forgot the game existed. Um, and then I got to college and I needed to make friends. There were some people playing Magic the Gathering, and I was like, I'm a nerd. I'll do that. So I picked Magic back up, started playing kitchen table standard. I mean, it was whatever cards came out of the latest box that we opened, we'd throw a deck together and have fun with that. Eventually, we started playing a little bit more like focused modern. Um, did a little bit of drafting, did a lot of different formats and just fun stuff to do in Magic. And then it was my birthday, and Commander Anthology 2 had just come out, and my grandma was nice enough to ask what I wanted for my birthday, and that's what I said I wanted. And lo and behold, it showed up at my door, and I started playing Commander. I started playing one of the decks that came in the in that set was Marin of Clan Neltoth. I put that deck together, and I still have it together. It is still silly expensive, and a deck that I absolutely adore playing. It is currently a bracket 3 deck. I have no delusions that it's a CDH deck, but it's one of my favorite decks to play. So I got into that. Loved making everyone's life miserable with edict effects. Um, my friends asked me to calm down a little bit, and eventually Ikoria was printed. I saw time and I was like, this is right up my alley. I get to use everything as a resource: creatures, counters, tokens, everything's a resource. I want to be able to find ways to exploit that and put it together as a casual deck, and it wasn't very casual. Um, Almost immediately, the deck was a little bit too broken, and my friends were like, "All right, you can't play that one as much." Um, After college, I moved out to Iowa, played Magic in Iowa for years. Tayam saw a little bit of the light of day there. And when I got here to Colorado, I found a great community of people playing CDH. I was like, hey, my Tayam deck was always like pretty oppressive and casual. I'll try it here. Brought it to a tournament, got absolutely destroyed. Round one of that tournament, it was an Enchanted Grounds tournament when those were still going on. My round one pod was, I think, Jax, Jason, and Logan, maybe.
Ew,
And
that's brutal.
yeah, surprise, surprise, the final four table was those three and someone that wasn't me. Um, but had an absolute blast and haven't looked back. I've been playing CDH ever since that tournament. Now it's pretty much all I play. I'll sit down and play casual if my wife asks and stuff like that. But I my bag is usually full of 9 CDH decks. Maybe Marin slips in a time or two.
Well, I mean, not to take you too far back, but um, we used to have a local back in the very early level 7 days who would bring Marin pretty religiously and would just turn 3, I win, turn 3, I win, over and over and over again. So I do think that deck does have legs in CDH if somebody's willing to put the work in.
Oh yeah, it's a super cool deck. It's very resilient and Holt combo's good as people have been proving recently. So I see no reason why it couldn't work, but I think times are my hardest now.
Oh, 100%. So it also sounds like you have a pretty like deep basis in 60 card originally. Um, I know that you said that this is mostly kitchen table. Have you played any competitive modern or standard?
Never played in tournaments in 60 card. Besides like pre-releases, which aren't really 60 card. But never really competed in 60 card. But I competed in other stuff throughout my life. I was nationally rated rock climber. Did that for a long time. I competed in martial arts for years. So did other things competitively, and then just kind of have brought the skill sets I developed through that into Magic now.
Oh, if you wouldn't mind me asking, what translates directly from rock climbing and martial arts for you into Magic?
Yeah, totally. For me, it's being able to go from, hey, I'm having fun with friends, I'm hanging out, I'm having a good time, and thinking relaxed. At the start of a climb, usually in tournament climbs, they start off relatively simple and easy, kind of like the first couple turns of a game of Magic Gathering. And so being able to transition from that kind of coasting mentality to where I'm just kind of doing things, I'm moving through the motions, I'm not thinking very hard, I'm not working very hard, into very quickly being able to pivot into, all right, it's game time. I got to go 100%. I got to, you know, put in the effort now. That's a skill that I think I bring from that past experience that really helps me. It means that when I play a really slow deck where I know I'm going to time like Tayam, it means that the entire day I'm not in focus mode. I'm not in, hard game time mode. And I get to kind of coast for parts of my day. Like those first early couple turns are pretty easy for me. And then I have to think really hard at the end. That means that I'm not getting that tournament fatigue as badly as everyone else around me.
Okay, that's really cool. I haven't heard anybody come at it from that perspective before, and that's pretty awesome. Um, so you picked up Tayam because it just appealed to you with all of its little resource management and it was fundamentally broken. How did you scale it up when you initially started playing CDH out here with it?
Yeah. First thing I did is realize that there's some combos that I hadn't seen before. I had Devoted Druid combos in my deck, and those are pretty good. I had card called Barrington Medic. It's 0504, something like that. That untaps to reduce the next damage you would take by one or something. Um, Really, all it says is if you land a way to generate mana off of tapping a creature, it will go infinite with Tayam on board. So I had a lot of like really silly combos in the deck like that. A bunch of cards that just really shouldn't see play in CDH. So I started trimming that down. and adding in more stacks effects. I was playing like a couple, but more like the edict effects like I would have in Marin. And I was like, hey, I don't need to cast spells to win the game. That's pretty strong. Let's put in rule of law, deafening silence, all that type of stuff, and start turning that knob up a little bit.
Okay.
So eventually I got a little bit more stacks here, but I just kind of started adding cards that seemed like they would work. Eventually started running the floating mana loop, which is a 11, 13 step combo in time or something like that, for your first iteration of the loop. So uh, didn't know that one existed. Had the cards in my deck beforehand, and then added a couple more after I learned about it.
Well, I'm definitely going to have you walk us through that loop. But before we get too deep into this, since we're talking about Tayam, can you walk us through what Tayam actually does?
Yeah, totally. So Tayam is a 4 mana, a 1 white black green for a legendary nightmare beast, 3/3. Each other creature you control enters the battlefield with a vigilance counter, and then you can pay 3 mana and remove 3 counters from among creatures you control to mill yourself for 3, and then return any 3-drop permanent or less from graveyard to battlefield. Um, what that basically means is that we're able to dig through our deck and then put cards directly into play. It's a very, very powerful effect that once someone has said, yeah, I'll let this time activation resolve, there is no response point, which makes it incredibly powerful because there's a little bit of mystery, some unknown that happens.
Excellent. So I'm guessing you don't have any permanents in your deck that cost more than 3 at this point, then?
Just Tayam. My deck list name is I can only count to 3, and I have a little bit of personal pride in not putting 4 drops in. There's a couple that are probably good enough to play, but it's kind of fun not playing them.
Excellent. Um, so why should you choose to play Tayam in today's meta?
Yeah, totally. Tayam is a deck where the entire idea of the deck list is to attack the meta from a direction that it isn't prepared to play against. It does this both through not being interactable on the stack in normal means. You can't counter my Tayam activations. Force of Will doesn't stop me. Um, so that's obviously very, very powerful. But then the other part is that most players aren't ready to play against stacks. Most players' decks aren't set up to function through a rule of law, collector oof, chains of Mephistopheles, any of these effects that just say, hey, we're slowing down and playing at the speed I want to. Not only are players' decks not set up for that, but most players aren't ready for it. They aren't experienced in it. And so it's a situation that actually puts them a little bit off kilter and tends to make people panic just a little bit. And so you get a little bit of advantage there. So I think you play Tayam in today's meta if you want to attack the meta from an angle that it's never prepared to face. Um, yeah, it does a really good job of just making sure that no one is ready to play against what it's trying to do.
Do you buy the rock, paper, scissors that has been preached by old heads in CDH forever that, mid range beats stacks, stacks beats turbo, turbo beats XYZ? No?
I do not. I actually think most of my best matchups are mid-range. So the idea that everyone says that mid-range beats stacks always makes me chuckle a little bit. I mean, no bad cards, Cannon, Blue Farm, Rogish Eye. These are decks that I sit down at the table and I'm like, oh yeah, this is going to be a good game. It feels great. I mean, the deck is set up to beat those decks because that is what the meta is, right? It's a deck where you choose your pieces to target the meta. So if the meta is mid-range, I'll just put in stacks pieces that target that mid-range gameplay.
Okay.
Also, in regards to playing stacks, when you're looking at your mulligans, how hard do you mulligan in regards to a table?
Yeah, totally. I find myself probably 75 to 80% of the time mulliganing for a piece of stacks that is going to shut down at least 2, if not hopefully all 3 decks. Occasionally, you don't get the luxury that every deck is susceptible to the same stacks pieces. Um, but when I sit down, my goal is to stacks everyone most of the time. That being said, Tayam, because it wins on an axis that no one's really ready to deal with, regardless, right? I'm almost all creature combos. Um, because of that, occasionally I just keep hands that are, hey, on turn 3, I'm going to be producing 12 mana, have 3 counters, and I'll figure out what to do from there. But my typical normal game plan is turn 1 Dork, turn 2 Staxbeast, turn 3 Tayam. And that game plan is quite effective so long as you know what you're looking for, depending on what the pot is doing. So learning the meta and how it affects your decisions is really, really important. You don't want to make it so that only one player is able to play the game besides yourself, because you're not set up to be able to deal with them.
And is there a piece that happens to be commonly effective against most matches?
Yeah, totally. Archon of Emeria tends to shut down most games pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So I've found that obviously any of the rule of law effects are incredibly potent, but also I run 3 Collector Oof style effects: Collector Oof, Null Rod, Stony Silence, and it is surprising how many decks that acts as a rule of law against. If they don't have access to their fast mana, their Smothering Ties, their anything like that, those cards shut things down pretty quickly as well. So I found both of those to be very effective. The rule of laws and the Collector Oof effects just kind of very quickly will warp a game around them.
It feels like it really hits mana or resources to be able to play things.
Yeah, no, exactly. Being able to hit the resources, right now it's a Rhystic Study meta. Rhystic Study gets much, much worse when Rhystic Study only draws 1 card every rotation, or 1 card every player's turn. Rule of
How
law says that Rhystic Study draws 1 card a turn. That's turning it into an Esper Sentinel. That's amazing, right? If
Yeah.
everyone could turn Rhystic Studies into Esper Sentinels, they would. Rule of law does that.
How do you handle running into a stacks player who's playing on a different axis than you are? When you run into things like a Grafdigger's Cage or a Curse Totem?
Those are actually some of my tougher matchups. Winota is one of Tayam's. Winota, Magda, Sisay, Arkham Dagson. These are decks that when I see at the table, I realize I have to respect them maybe more than other players do, because I'm not set up to stop them. If your deck isn't casting spells on the stack, I'm going to have a hard time. And if your deck is capable of playing stacks effects, Tivit is another one. Tivit gets to run a lot of board wipes and gets to run stacks effects that affect me. My deck is on, 10 or 11 pieces of removal right now, specifically so that if someone has something that's taking over the game, I can remove it, but also so that I can remove stacks effects against myself, or my own permanents if someone's trying to clone them, stuff like that. So I find that having that removal is how I deal with it. But I certainly play a above average on board removal suite, because stacks effects surprisingly shut down the stack.
Makes sense to me. Is your removal suite more creature targeted, or is it diverse enough to hit things like artifacts and enchantments?
Yeah, so I actually focus on artifacts and enchantments. My creature removal, I have 3-4 pieces. I have Touch the Spirit Realm, Skyclave Apparition, Summon Ixion, which I know everyone knows is a CDH staple. It enters, exiles a creature under it, and then generates some counters over time as it's a saga creature, and then also just as it ticks up, makes more counters. And then Abigail, Eloquent First Year. That card just says remove the abilities of a creature. But then I have both Seju, Seal of Primordium, Touch the Spirit Realm, Night of Autumn, Skyclave Apparition again that can deal with anything else. So I tried to balance it a little bit, but artifacts and enchantments are certainly the ones that are usually scarier to me.
So one thing that I notice is it looks like there's a lot of synergy in the list. Just being able to either have pieces that are very similar to each other, or just the fact that time only cares about exile effects, because if it goes to the graveyard, you're likely getting it back.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I certainly am playing triplicates of most effects I can. Things for the floating mana loop or stacks effects. I find that running 2 or 3 of the same style of effect, because I'm not on very many tutors, I'm not on very many ways to go find the things I want to have. Just having a redundancy of them is the way I get around that. And then you're totally right that exile is really the only way you affect what I'm doing. I love telling people, yeah, go ahead, force will this. I'll get it back. Oh, sure. You want to use your bowmaster to ping my bowmaster? Cool. I'll just bring it back. Right? All of that is one of the strengths of Tayam, is it's very resilient. Board wipes obviously stop me. Removing Tayam stops me. But besides that, good luck stopping.
Speaking of your tutor package, being in Abzan, you obviously have the best tutors in the game. You seem to have leaned way more heavily into the Green 2 board tutors and mostly ignored most of the best black tutors that are available to you. Can you kind of walk us through your thought process in selecting your tutor package?
Yeah, totally. The reason I don't have, for instance, Demonic Tutor, right? Demonic Tutor is the classic, hey, I'm playing black, I play Demonic Tutor. I'm not playing that because Demonic Tutor feels really bad through your own rule of law. Casting a tutor, tutoring something out, getting it, it's probably going to be a sorcery speed effect because that's the way the deck plays when it casts spells, although it works at instant speed with the activations. So I'm likely getting that card stuck in my hand for a rotation of the table unless I'm tutoring a land or very few cards, Court of Calling, stuff like that. So the demonic tutor effects just don't feel great. That means that I either want instant speed tutor effects or I want something to go directly to board. That way I can say, all right, I'll use my nature's rhythm and put the card into play immediately. That way I'm not trapped by my own stacks effects. I don't care about them. And the goal is that my deck functions through all of its own stacks effects pretty much the entirety of the game.
Now, I can understand where a card, because you're not on Entomb, I've noticed. Entomb looks like it would be good with time just from the point of getting into the graveyard, but it doesn't actually put a card in your hand. The one I'm a little surprised by is no Enlightened Tutor, which even some of your creatures are also enchantments.
Yep. No, Enlightened Tutor is a card that has been sitting in my sideboard, and I keep wanting to find a slot, but just haven't found where it feels right. I've tested it a fair amount, but being able to put the card on top and then activate Tayam, so I know what it is, I activate, it goes into yard, I can get it back immediately, or I can draw my Esper Sentinel or whatever I would need in a scenario, surprisingly, Court of Call or Cryptolith, right, is pretty common thing that I'd want. So being able to do that is certainly powerful. And you're totally right, Titus. It's a card that I've been looking at play. Is specifically Enlightened Tutor.
Okay, it sounds like it's got something going for it still. Okay, I was wondering on that.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, it definitely looks like with the amount of card draw, you are more limited to time activations than anything, or you're just going top deck mode. Would you say that's more of a strength or a weakness for this commander?
yeah. My deck certainly does not draw cards. I have Esper Sentinel in, um, just to help bad mulligans. It's something that a lot of time players disagree on is that Esper Sentinel shouldn't be played. We don't want to draw cards. We don't want to have 0 cards in library and someone casts a spell and makes us deck ourselves. So I think it makes complete sense not to play it, but fixing mulligans is needed sometimes. But besides that, I don't draw cards. It is certainly a weakness of the deck. But the thing that I think helps get around that is that every time activation gets to look at 3 cards and cast one for free. So it's almost like drawing 3 cards and playing one of them for free. And if that effect was printed on a card, I think a lot of people would be playing it, especially if it said that spell couldn't be countered when it was cast. So the weakness is I don't really ever have great cards in hand, but I'm getting to look at a bunch of cards and still getting the draw style effect, the ability to see more of my deck through those time activations.
Yeah, I'm sure if we went card by card here, um, we would just be asking you questions for years. But I was looking specifically through your considering pile, and because one card that just popped to mind, and I just was curious if you were considering it. Aura Shards feels like it would be such a natural fit into this deck. And then when I saw that, so I also saw that you have Heartwood Storyteller in your sideboard, and
Yeah,
those are two just opposite thoughts.
totally.
um,
Um,
what you thinking there, Josh?
yeah, so Tayam does surprisingly well in high resource games because I stop everyone else from being able to utilize their resources. The idea behind Aura Shards is that it can help force the lower resource games if I don't have a stacks effect out, right? Blowing up Rhystic, Smothering Tithes, and the such. It hasn't made its way into my deck because I'm okay with people having the Rhystic studies. I actually usually prefer people having Rhystic studies. If someone's going to remove my stacks effect, I want the other players to be able to draw cards and then stop them from winning the game. So the idea behind Aura Shards is it's really, really powerful and it seems like it would fit. And every time I try it, it feels bad because I get it in play, I blow up the engines, and then someone's able to remove my stacks effect and push. So it's a card that goes in and out of my deck, as I think in certain metas, it's going to have a home. It just isn't right now. The idea of Heartwood Storyteller is that I do really well in those high resource games. Worst case scenario, I land a Heartwood Storyteller and it's a draw. But the best case, I don't have to cast spells to win the game, and you probably can only cast one to stop me. So if I get up to 4 Tayam activations, I probably don't care if everyone's able to remove Tayam. I'm just going to keep hitting the Tayam button. I'm just going to keep activating. And so Heartwood Storyteller, while it seems really scary, I'm okay if you have a ton of cards in hand. You can only play one of them.
Okay.
I haven't play tested it yet. It's all theory crafting right now for it, but it seems like it might fit way better than I think it should. But at the same time, it hasn't made the list yet. So it seems like fun. I also think if I don't have a stacks effect out, we Heartwood Storyteller, I get to 30 cards in hand and I move to discard, I'm winning the game. If I get to sculpt 20 odd cards into my graveyard, the game is over.
I'm a big fan of that card, but I also run 25 pieces of permission in my deck. And I feel like if I was on 5 fewer, it would be completely unplayable. So
Yeah, it's
Mm.
there's a reason it's not in the list right now.
Yeah.
It seems like a lot of fun. I think there's a cool idea behind it. I just don't know if it's good enough.
Yeah, that's fair. So when you sit down, said already that you really like seeing a mid-range deck. Specifically, you're digging Ragisha, you're digging Kinnan, you're digging Farm right now. Are there any decks that you dread playing against? Is it just the stacks decks, or are anything else that you hate sitting down to it?
Yeah, totally. So any of the non-stack like casting spell stacks are very bad for me.
Mm.
By that I mean Magda, even if it's not a Staxy version of Magda, Magda's just a hard matchup. I don't stop them except for 2 cards I have, or 4 cards. I have Collector Oof effects that stop Magda, and Opposition Agent. Sisay, I don't interact with Sisay at all. Sisays love seeing me sit down at the table because I'm going to play the Rule of Law and they're going to go, cool, watch me activate this Sisay. Arkham is another hard one. And then surprisingly, Rogthras. Rogthras is a deck that usually is able to generate its value in ways that I don't usually interact with, right? They don't need to cast a ton of spells. They just need to generate a ton of mana. And so if I can't stop that mana generation, which usually it's lands based or creature based, then I'm going to have a worse time in that matchup. So those are some decks that I definitely sit down at the table and I'm like, oh, this is going to be a rougher matchup.
Okay. So we've talked a little bit about your matchups. We've talked a little bit about a couple specific card choices. How does this aardvark win?
Yeah, totally. Tayam wins through getting infinite time activations. And it can do that in a number of ways. That's one of my favorite parts about playing Tayam is I often don't win the game in a way that I've won the game previously. So there are some known ways that the deck wins, right? Devoted Druid plus making its toughness 4 or greater wins the game with Tayam. I'm able to tap and then untap to generate a mana and a counter, and I can do that, make 3 mana, 3 counters, activate Tayam, and then remove those 3 counters to be able to activate again. Obviously, that's incredibly powerful. So Devoted Druid loops are one that everyone tends to know about. There's a bunch of stuff I can do with Gaia's Cradle loops. I'm able to sacrifice Gaia's Cradle to something like a Squandered Resources, bring it back with a Tayam activation and generate infinite mana. And so long as I'm able to generate counters off of paying mana, I'm usually able to convert that into a win as well. There's a bunch of other things that you wouldn't expect the deck to be able to do. The one that I hold near and dear to my heart is the Floating Mana loop. It is a currently in my primer, I think 13 or 14 step combo, and that's for your first iteration of the loop. So it takes a little bit to get going. It takes a lot of learning how the combo works. There's a lot of holding priority with a time activation on the stack, tapping things when you wouldn't expect to be able to, and layering of triggers and activations. But being able to activate Tayam infinite times off of it ends up presenting a win. The floating mana loop consists of using an undying creature, the ability to tap it for mana, a sacrifice outlet, usually some form of haste enabler, and Tayam itself. So it usually ends up taking between 3 and 5 cards to be able to assemble a combo. And things like that, most people would think in CEDH aren't good enough. But the cool thing about Tayam is it's able to replace a lot of these effects with other cards. That redundancy that we talked about earlier in the deck, it means that you dedicate a couple of cards to the floating mana loop, things like Young Wolf and Strangleroot Geist, but the rest of them are cards that you would just play naturally. Earthcraft, Cryptolith Rite, Enduring Vitality. These are all cards that we all would play in any deck where we're trying to tap creatures for mana. And Tayam plays, my list is on 45 creatures. So being able to generate that much mana off of them just ends up being natural. So once I get those infinite time activations, however that came about, like I said, these are a couple ways that are known, but often I just went through random things on board. I have 12 random cards on board. I did something cool, someone's going to die. Once I'm able to get that done, I activate Time infinite times. I'm able to mill myself over, and then I start looping either Orcish Bowmasters to ping everyone down, sacrificing it to one of my sacrifice outlets, or use White Plume Adventurer, using the fact that I can go through the dungeon at instant speed. I'll use the trapped room to make target player lose 5 life infinite times.
Okay. I understand how the White Plume Adventure loops work because I play Derevi, but for people at home, can you just quickly explain that mechanic?
Yeah, totally. So as we venture through the dungeon, we have a room called Trap. That room says target player loses 5 life. There's a bunch of other things that happen. One of them is find a basic, generate some counters, draw a card, and then mill 10, return something, I think are all the rooms that I travel through when I do this loop. I'd have to have it in front of me to be 100% sure. But each of those is a trigger that goes onto the stack.
I have
Now
it
in
right
port,
here.
yeah,
Sorry. So it's the secret entrance, search for a basic land card. Fort is put 2+1/1 counters on it. Trap is lose 5 life. Archives is draw a card. Throne of the Dead 3 is reveal the top 10 cards of your library. Put a creature card from among them onto the battlefield with 3+1/+1 counters on it. It gains hexproof for you until your next turn. So you can only do this for as many cards as you have left in your library.
yep. So as I go through the dungeon, eventually I'll stack infinite card draw, which when I have no cards left in my library would kill me. What's really cool though is because I get a trigger to draw the card when I venture into that room, I can say in response to that, I'd like to sacrifice my White Plume Adventurer, bring it to the graveyard, activate Tayam, bring it back, venture into the next room. Now I don't care about that next room. I don't have 10 cards left in my library, so I'll activate again. And I'll keep doing that where I replace what's currently at the top of the stack with another Tayam activation, bringing back the White Plume Adventure. Eventually, I'll have infinite stacks of this, and I'll only keep letting the target player loses 5 life be the only one that I ever let get off the stack. Maybe I'll let generate some extra counters off the stack, because why not? But I basically am going to sit there and use the fact that I'm able to stack the triggers onto the stack so that I can let only one of them resolve, and it can be just that target player loses 5 life.
It's a really clean way to win the game, which is super cool.
Yeah.
Oh, do you have a follow-up, Thomas?
I was going to make you walk us through the floating mana loop.
Oh,
But
what?
Yeah, totally.
Yes.
Yeah, totally. So the floating mana loop, it's called the floating mana loop because to start the loop, I have to have 1 mana floating from some source that is outside of the loop. That can literally be tapping a land. I then am going to tap my Undying creature for mana. That could be Strangleroot Geist plus a Enduring Vitality. Strangleroot Geist naturally has haste. Or it could be Young Wolf and Earthcraft or something. But so long as I'm able to tap this Undying creature for mana every time it's on board, that'll let me continue the loop. So I'll tap. I now have 2 mana. I'm now going to sacrifice my Undying creature to get a trigger of Undying to one of my counter-generating sack outlets. That's Carrion Feeder, Bartolomeu del Presidente, and Bloodflow Connoisseur. So once it's sacrificed to that, I have an Undying creature. If that trigger resolves, I'll now have it enter the battlefield. I now have 2 mana floating and 3 counters. I have the +1/+1 counter on the thing I sacrificed it to, the vigilance counter from the creature entering the battlefield from Titan's replacement effect, and the +1/+1 counter from the Undying. I now activate Tayam. by tapping my Undying creature to produce 1 mana, giving me my 3rd mana I needed to start the loop. Now, it would be really nice and easy if the loop stopped there, but at this point I've only generated 2 mana. So in response to my own time activation, I'm going to sacrifice my Undying creature. It no longer has that +1/+1 counter on it because I've paid cost of time removing it. It will re-enter with Undying. I will tap it for a mana. I've now produced 3 mana throughout the course of this loop. I'm going to sacrifice it again. It will not come back with Undying, importantly, because it has its own +1/+1 counter, so it will be in the graveyard. I'll now let my time activation resolve. The time activation will pick up that Undying creature. It re-enters the battlefield with a Vigilance counter. I'm able to tap it for a mana and start the loop over, right? I have 1 floating from that mana I tapped in the middle of that time activation. And now I'm able to repeat this loop, generating 1 counter each time I do this loop on my counter generating sack outlet. I don't actually net any mana throughout the course of this loop, so I have to wait until I find something like a Gaia's Cradle in my graveyard, a Badgermole Cub to make the creature start tapping for 2 mana, or a Squandered Resources to be able to start netting a little bit of extra mana. But I'm able to generate infinite counters. Because I have infinite counters, eventually I'll find one of those pieces as I mill through, bring it back, generate a little bit of extra mana, and then start changing what that line is from there until I can stack infinite time activations.
That's a nightmare. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's super fun. It's one of those ones where you can have everything assembled on board, pass the turn, and no one realizes. So that I'm able to do it so that my Undying triggers resolve in someone else's turn, where I am first player in priority order.
That's
Nice.
sick.
So I do have a question, and this might be one of the deck's weaknesses, but this deck seems very commander centric. Are there ways to win outside of Tayam?
In my list, there are not. I am not going to win the game if I do not have a time on board, except through combat damage. The deck is 45 creatures, so it's surprisingly good at punching people to death. But my deck does require time on board. There are a lot of other brews of time right now experimenting with Necrotic Ooze combos, which basically act as a replacement for Tayam. It's a 4-drop that gains activated abilities of all creatures in graveyard. And so you're able to do Walking Ballista, Devoted Druid shenanigans with that to be able to win the game without time on board. However, when experimenting with it, just decided it wasn't for me. It wasn't the way I enjoyed winning the game, and it didn't feel as powerful as just being able to resolve a Tayam. So yeah, I
No,
currently
very
can't win
fair.
without time on board.
How often have you won through just beats?
Uh, I've I currently have like 170 games recorded in my Play Nice. I think I've won 2 of those through combat beats, but I
All
have
right.
killed a lot of players through combat beats. But actually closing out the game through it, usually it's I kill a player because they had the stacks piece, they had the curse totem or something. All right, cool. Now that you're gone, I'll win in the way I normally do.
Yeah. Um, when you're mulliganing, what are you generally looking for?
Yeah, I'm looking for one of 2 things. The deck obviously is known as a stacks deck. It's very good at it. So I'll mulligan for a turn 1 dork, turn 2 stacks piece, and that's a pretty effective way to just shut down a game. Specifically, I have to make sure that that stack piece, like talked about earlier, affects everyone at least a little bit. The other thing is I'll mulligan for just mana encounters. The deck is incredibly good at just saying, I have a bunch of mana. I run 12 pieces of ramp, although I'm only on 4 1-mana dorks. Things like Gemstone Caverns and Gaia's Cradle, and a bunch of 2-mana dorks, Incubation Druid, Devoted Druid, stuff like that, Wall of Roots, where I both get mana and counters out of 1 card. So I'm able to mulligan for some of these really powerful effects that are unique to Tayam, right? Having a Wall of Roots or a Devoted Druid in most decks is like, oh, cool, that's pretty good. In Tayam, it's like, hey, that's a problem. Someone probably needs to pay attention to that one. So
Awesome.
One of the cards that you brought up earlier was Chain of Mess. I can't say the name. We know what it is.
yeah, Chains
Chain
of
of, Thank
Mephistopheles.
you. So that card seems very game warping. How does that
Yeah.
usually impact those environments where it actually successfully resolves.
Yeah, totally. So Chains is certainly a game warping card, as it immediately disrupts what the current meta is trying to do by putting cards into their own hand and figuring out how to win later. It makes everything a, is this resource what I need right now? If answer no, I'll pitch it. So that can warp a game around it incredibly quickly. But what it does do is it helps me against certain matchups. Like I said, I already feel really good against things like Blue Farm, No Bad Cards Cannon, even without a Chains on board. Decks like Rog Thras, where I naturally can't keep up with their value if they got a good start, which they usually have a faster start than I do. A card like Chains of Mephistopheles means that they can't sit there and accrue the value they want. Sure, they get to filter through their deck, but that isn't going to necessarily be as powerful as having 10 cards in hand, right? If I have 2 cards in hand when I start activating Thrasios, by the end of it, I have 2 cards in hand. And so if I didn't make the right decisions throughout those all those activations, then I may have thrown away a potential win condition. And so the ability to kind of shape what that looks like and make players make misplays just by the fact that the card is out is something that I kind of rely on. It's a card that makes decision points very hard, but also immediate. A downside of the card in my list is if I don't have a Rule of Law out, it feeds Breach very, very quickly. If someone has a Ristic out and they're a Breach deck, and I play Chains without anything else trying to disrupt them, that was a misplay on my part, in my opinion. I need a Collector Oof effect so that they can't use the Lotus Petal. I need a Rule of Law so they can't start their chain, because otherwise I just fed them the best graveyard they could have ever asked for.
One of the positives, though, in a list like yours that I see from Chains is you get to take advantage of cards going into your graveyard and they're not being cast. Unless they have something that stops your activated ability, the spell's gonna, well, it's gonna get put into play.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I usually am not drawing extra cards unless I have that Esper Sentinel in play. But if I ever do, being able to sculpt my graveyard is incredibly powerful for me. It's actually most of the time survival of the fittest isn't to tutor a card to my hand, it's to activate it twice to put a card to my graveyard. Chains lets me do that immediately, just when I start drawing extra cards. So if someone has like a Heartwood Storyteller on board and I have a Chains out, I'm having a great day.
Yeah, that's sick. Um, so it seems like for some reason, WotC has decided that Tayam is the deck that they just want to print in cards into oblivion for CDH, whether it's by design or not. If you were to talk to their design team and have them print a card that would be fair in standard or in modern. So like not magical Christmas land, but something reasonable this year. What would that card look like for you coming into Tayam?
I think that there's a couple different avenues that it could take. Um, there's a card called Hex Drinker. It's a level up creature. If they just printed that creature, I don't even care about what the level ups do, but if it could level up at instant speed, just 1 colorless mana equals 1 counter at instant speed, I'll take that one. That card would be incredible. If it taps for mana in addition equal to the number of counters on it, oh, we're having a good time now. So yeah, I think the big thing about time is um, I want all of my abilities to work at instant speed. The deck is incredibly good at winning on other people's turns, activating. Oh, I didn't realize I could win, but I flipped whatever card, Caller of the Claw, and I have an Ashnod's Altar on board. That just turns into a win. And so the ability to make sure that all of the abilities worked at instant speed is actually the thing that I think I would ask for, is that some of these other niche abilities, Fiend Artisan, if that card had works at instant speed instead of sorcery, it'd be really powerful for the deck.
Yeah, the fact that you have so much face down potential is definitely one of the things I really like to compare your deck against Turn's Narset for, because it's the unknown that gives you the power.
Yeah, no, there's so many times where people say, "Hey, Josh, do you have anything for this?" And I said, "I got a random activation. Like, if you have something that's known, let's use that because we can always scare them off of doing things with my activation." And that's a very powerful effect.
Well, Titus, do you have a last question before we start wrapping up here?
Yeah. All right. Josh, if we're going to sell a new player on this or just a player in general, I'm picking up Tayam. How difficult is it to pilot Tayam? In addition to that, do their math skills need to be on par?
Yeah, totally. I would not recommend Tayam for a new player. Um, Not necessarily because of math skills or anything like that. There's a lot besides that that makes Tayam hard. Right? There's a lot of keeping track of resources, and resource management is very important. But the thing that I actually think makes Tayam incredibly difficult is learning the meta. Tayam is a deck because you play so many stacks effects where you can warp the game around yourself every single game you play, which is one of the things I really enjoy about the deck. I always am talked about in a pod. I'm always someone who gets to have conversations. I have to politic frequently. I am always in the discussion at the table. Um, but if you choose the wrong stacks piece, you're handing the game to another player at the table. Um, and so I think the hardest part is learning what 80% of the meta does and where their choke points are, what thing is going to affect them. I think that's true for all stacks decks. Um, but Tayam, on top of just what generally affects the table, throws in, like you were talking about, the math skills and the resource management. Realizing that I don't want to remove a counter because it puts the creature to 0 counters instead of 1 counters, and what happens if I flip a Rishkar is a level of forward thinking that the deck requires that most other decks don't. You're always having to think about the potential possibilities, as every time you activate Tayam, just like for everyone else, there's a level of mystery. For you, there is as well. And so being able to flip, think about what the possible probabilities are that you hit a card, flip into it, and what it then allows you to do is incredibly important. So knowing your deck list inside and out, knowing what everyone else is trying to do, and managing all those resources is something that I think makes Tayam very difficult to pilot.
That's very fair. And the other thing to ask in addition to that, so I hear somebody is offering potential coaching services for this
I
commander.
Yeah, I certainly do offer coaching sessions. You can find me on pregame.gg, that Logan from Critical EDH set up, or reach out to me on Discord, WelderZE. I'm in a bunch of Discords. I'm sure you'll be able to find me. But yeah, I offer coaching on Tayam. And yeah, so far some of my coaching clients have had pretty good success on Tayam after bringing it to their first tournaments. Like I said, I wouldn't recommend it as your first CDH deck, but I do think it's a blast. It works in ways that other decks don't get to, and so you get to do some really cool stuff.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us today, Josh. Outside of your burgeoning coaching career, is there anything else you'd like to shout out today?
Just you guys. Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. You guys ran an awesome tournament recently, and it was a blast. I can't wait to see what you guys do next.
Appreciate you, bud. Well, if you have all stayed with us this long, please consider giving this episode a like, follow, or subscribe, depending on how you found us. Check out our Discord and our socials in the link below. We'll be linking Josh's Tayam list below as well. If you're interested in a playmat featuring our uh, sick logo by Fox Tattoos over it that way, can never get the direction right. We have some in stock, just hit us up. And if you want to get some of the best sleeves for your best decks, consider checking out Century Sleeves. Use code EBAM5 at checkout. They're only $10 a pack, and they are fantastic. Be kind to each other. Be kind to yourselves. It's just a game.